Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Ernest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to our podcast on our YouTube channel, our Spotify, everywhere that you can hear and listen to podcasts. Make sure that you guys are following us, and we definitely appreciate that, especially on our YouTube. We're trying to get our YouTube subscriptions up. And on our YouTube channel, when you subscribe to the YouTube channel, not only do you get the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, but you also get the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, which is also a podcast under that same channel. So I know you guys heard the ad at the very beginning of the podcast. So it is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, which is our partner podcast. So make sure that you guys are doing that. So also I'm going to tell you guys how you can win $100 from the podcast, but you got to stay until the end of the episode in order to get that information. Make sure that you guys are also checking us out on our website, dealhealfulfill.org. That's dealhealfulfill.org. And we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the episode. But today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Dr. Carmen. How you doing?
Oh, I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yes. First of all, let me say thank you for being on, because you could have been doing anything else, but you're here with us, me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it and wanted you to know that up front. So thank you very much for being here. So, Doc, do me a favor. introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us who you are and what it is that you do.
Yes, thank you so much. So, first off, things that are most important to me. I'm a mom. I have an incredible 16-year-old son. I'm a wife to an amazing man. So, that's a little bit of my personal stuff happening in my world. But in terms of my professional background, I'm a psychology instructor and professor. And so, my background is in mental health. Looking at social issues, how all of the things, all of the aspects of our lives impact our mental health. And so, one of the things that I'm very clear that I was put on the planet to do was to help to empower girls and women. And I'm very, very clear that boys and men are an important part of that equation. So, a little bit of what I do.
Yes, yes, and definitely here on this podcast, we definitely are a big supporter and component of therapy and mental health and that whole field, and definitely we can talk about that some. But we came across each other. Speaking of the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, we came across each other because you hit me up on Instagram and you sent me a post of something that you were doing, which I thought was amazing, right? And it was around the I can't even think of it exactly the way that it was spoken. So I'll let you do it. But it was around of a program that you're doing encouraging dads to talk to their daughters about their periods, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
and especially with the girl dad discussions podcast, which we did record, and by the time this is out, that should be out. So if you guys definitely want to hear a very entertaining conversation about dads and dealing with young ladies and our daughters and talking to them about our periods, that was a very entertaining yet educational episode that we did. So please go make sure you guys go and check out the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with Dr. Carmen as a guest. But we that's how we kind of came across each other. And so before we even get into that, um, do me a favor. So, what was the thing that kind of stirred you, even not only to become a therapist, but also to even take on that challenge of empowering young women? How did that even? How did you even? What was your journey to get you to there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first, at growing up as a girl and a woman myself, and with a very, very incredible dad, very, very socially aware. He would talk to us about, what was happening in the world, what was happening internationally. So we grew up being very just observant of like social processes. Like what's going on
Mhm.
here. And so after completing my master's degree and a little bit before actually completing my doctorate degree, I started teaching psychology of women. And this is probably what really had me delve into this particular area is I started looking at lots of the things that are impacting the mental health and well-being of girls and women. Started taking a really serious, sort of look at the social structures, that are in place. And one of the things that I started really sort of academically paying attention to was how a very normal part of development,
Mhm.
talking about puberty and menstruation, has such a negative stigma around it
Yeah.
that girls and grown women are fearful. They're experiencing anxiety, some of them trauma. And I can tell you a story about this in a second. And I was like, wait a minute. We need this process in order for the human species to continue. So,
Mhm.
why does it have such a negative stigma? Why is there not at least a neutral stance, let alone a respectful, stance to it? So, that's kind of how I started getting my feet wet and talking with people, working with people around the what I call the power of the period, right?
Mhm.
It's really, really a powerful thing. And it's not only powerful for girls and women, but let me tell you that it's powerful when boys and men understand the phases of the cycle
Mhm.
so that they know how to be supportive and how to be an ally. So I see it as a benefit for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, and I know. So I've been married twice, right? So I've had two wives, and I have a daughter. I have five sisters, and of course a mom. So definitely surrounded by women. Yet and still, um, even though I personally know that okay, this is going on. Growing up, the way that we were taught, I never seen it, right? I never seen the effects of it. I never seen the residue of it. You know what I mean? It was like I know it's happening, and I remember even when my daughter got to the point where she was old enough that she's had her first period. I was at work, and her mom called me like, "Hey, this is what's going on," And so I did have the conversation somewhat with my daughter afterwards because of course I want her to be able to talk to me about anything, and definitely this was a big thing, a big change that she was going through for the first time, and definitely wanted to be her, and she was a daddy's girl. She still is a daddy's girl, and so it was like, okay, this is another part of our relationship that can help to make us stronger. And I know that's something that you speak on a lot of, to be able to, when fathers take a strong stance or a forward stance, in this area, that it strengthens our bond with our daughters. So if you could just speak on that a little bit, to just to the not we'll talk about the mothers in a second, but just the fathers, because it's such a taboo subject, right? So I remember even growing up, like I said, I got five sisters, and I don't know if it was maybe one of my sisters asked me first, or maybe one of my girlfriends later on, but I definitely remember being asked, would you go get my personals, as they was called, could you go, buy me some personals? And me personally, knowing I know boys, I know men, and still is like, no, we're not going, But me, like I said, I've been live with women my whole life, so it was nothing for me. Like, yeah, I'll go, I'll get it. It's normal. Um, but that's generally not the stance that fathers and men in general take. So if you just speak to the dads and the fathers, or just just the men in general right now, just to tell, I guess you could just encourage them. I'll let you take it, but and the part that how this really could be a benefit in their relationships with their daughters.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, first off, and I know we're going to talk about moms in a second because they're important too.
Mhm.
But for dads, dads are so critical for the self-esteem development of their daughters, for the self-worth development of their daughters, for the self-respect development of their daughters. Like dads are critical. And there are lots of studies out there that show that in the beginning, daddy's girl, dads and daughters are close. They got all the pictures on Facebook. When she's 4, 5, 6, they cute. They got their shades on. But one of the things you notice, if you look at a lot of the groups on Facebook that are daddy, daughter, girl, dad Facebook groups,
Mhm.
a lot of the pictures when the girls get to be 11, 12, 16, then pictures start fading off, right? And that is possibly a reflection of the fact that many girls feel like their dads are distancing themselves as they're developing into a young woman. And this is not to place blame anywhere, just to point out that girls can feel the distancing.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times it has to do with dads feeling sort of, awkward about, their girls developing into a young woman. This is daddy's baby girl. This is a little princess. And they want to keep that perception in
Yeah.
their minds. Well, we know that kids not supposed to stay kids. They're supposed
Right.
to, grow up and be contributors to their community and all of that stuff, right? That's what we want. and we want them to be prepared to do so. And so dads are so valuable as a part of that preparation, because when you can lean in, dads, when you can feel the fear and do it anyway, because I know that you're scared of the fact that she can now get pregnant. I know, you're scared of the fact that you don't know what the heck is going on and you don't feel knowledgeable even raising the issue. So you might be afraid of saying the wrong thing. So I know, like, those obstacles that exist, but I can definitely help you with that. And so when you can lean in, when you receive the knowledge, because you got to have some knowledge and you got to have some skill, some communication skill to be able to lean in to this particular period of development, right? Talking about puberty, then what that's going to do is that's going to demonstrate to your baby girl that you have her back. You don't want her feeling, you're distancing, you're pulling away, the separation. That's the time where she needs to feel even closer to you, right? When she's going into adolescence, because she's going to be having romantic relationships or some crushes or whatever, and you want her to be prepared. You want to role play with her. You want to tell her what to look out for. And when dads can muster the courage, because like we know this is a taboo topic, but when dads can set that aside, like, okay, hey, I'm going in for my daughter, and muster the courage to have these conversations, it just builds and fosters a strong, trusting father-daughter bond that lasts a lifetime.
Yeah, and I know it's a it's a taboo subject, and we, again, like you said, we definitely want our daughters to stay our little princesses, forever, but they grow up. Like I say often, my baby's not a baby no more. She's 20, so I don't even have a little baby no more. But I do have granddaughters now, so that's a whole nother subject. But but even that, and like I said, growing up, my mom and of course my grandmother, even my sisters, being surrounded by women, I've heard, or should I say overheard, the conversations of, how to carry yourself, how to take care of yourself, during these times. Of course, I wasn't in for the whole conversation, but I did remember having these conversations, and they must have been really good conversations, because like I said, I never seen any residue of it. You know what I mean? Like I can't tell you when my sisters or mom or anybody ever had, a period or anything like that. Besides, I know I've seen the boxes in the cupboard, or in the bathroom of the different things that they use, but I never seen it. You know what I'm saying? And so, just from a mother daughter standpoint, how important even is that in that teaching of this is how you take care of yourself. And again, like you said, even with that, still being able to give that message in a positive way, where we're not ashamed of this natural progression of womanhood, this natural progression of, your body cleansing itself, and all of that. But just coming from a mother, teaching her daughter, or any young woman that, maybe under her guidance, what is some of the things that may be important even in that conversation?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Unfortunately, lots of girls, even today, are taught very little about the menstrual cycle, like very little. There are grown women who, when they reflect back, when they were 12, right, who learned nothing about it.
Mhm.
So if we could just try to imagine, we're 11 years old, we have had no introduction to it at all. And you go, I'm gonna keep it real, okay? So you go to the bathroom, right, to pee, and you see blood in your panties. That is shocking.
Yeah.
That is traumatic, right? That, bless their 11-year-old hearts, they don't know what's going on. And so I have something called a Period Stories Project, where I interview people about how they learned about the cycle and all of that. This is where I've gained these stories. And so, these 35-year-old people reflecting back on when they were young are still traumatized by that.
Mm.
Like it still brings tears, to them as they recount the story to me and retell the story because they were so fearful. So there's a category of young people who were taught nothing about it. So, man, that's traumatic. Then there's a category of, young folks who are taught that, well, now you dirty, so now you can get pregnant, right? And that's the teaching. That's it. Right? You better keep your legs closed. You nasty now, and da 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 da. And so that is the negative energy that's put on it. Like, oh my God, it's gonna be my fault. If I get pregnant, if something happens, right? It's like it's all on me. And so they learn nothing about the cycle because it's actually 4 phases to the cycle. And most people don't even know that. They just think they're on their period or they're off their period. And that's not the case. There are lots of things that are going on during all 4 phases of the cycle that are really important that would benefit everybody to know. And then, I just want people to imagine what it can be like if you are, 8 years old, 9 years old, and your elders, your parents come to you and start talking about the beauty of your body.
Mm.
And this is what you can expect, when you get to puberty. This is what's going to occur. Your menstrual cycle is actually a guide showing you how to take care of yourself, right? How to take care of yourself emotionally. Okay, I'm not talking about just physically, but emotionally. So during this phase of the cycle, you're going to be moving and grooving and shaking. During this phase of the cycle, you're going to have lots of creative ideas and you can manifest. During this phase of the cycle, it might be time to slow down a little bit. Your body might be tired. You have fewer things on your calendar. You let people know that your temper might be a little short. Okay. And, during other phase of the cycle, it's time to drink your tea, your hot cocoa, curl up on the couch, watch your movie marathons. And so if everybody knew that, they'd have more respect for it because there are cultures that actually celebrate when a girl has her first period. And it's beautiful. The little girls are adorned in this beautiful garb and they got all these jewels on, and it's a family affair, right? It's a whole community event ushering, this young person in through adulthood. It's fantastic. So those are why it's some of the ways and reasons that it's important because I started off in this industry focusing on girls. And because I was like, oh my goodness, they don't know what's going on. They don't know these basics. They don't know basics of their anatomy, right? Sometimes girls, because they don't know the basic anatomy, they think, and again, I'm gonna keep it real, they think that the same hole they pee from is the hole that they bleed from, right?
Mm.
Having no clue that that's 2 different openings. So that's where I started. And what I found out, because working with the girls, I have a nice little sort of ending to that where there's a nice little mother-daughter connection to that. And that's where I really started learning about the trauma that a lot of grown women were still kind of hanging on to. And as they were looking at their daughters and wanting to do something differently, a lot of that negativity on how they were raised was coming to the surface. And so they needed some support too. So from that, I developed Rock with Your Menstrual Rhythm to show the grown women how to get down with their own rhythm. So it benefits everybody.
Okay. I want to go back a little bit, and you were mentioning about the phases of the cycle, right? And so, of course, on this podcast, we definitely want to give some information. We don't want to just be entertaining, but we want to offer some healing and some knowledge in the way. And so, even I guess for myself to know, because I definitely, like I said, I remember hearing remnants of the conversation, but definitely was not in on the whole conversation. If you could just talk to us about the different stages of the cycles and how it flows, for lack of a better term, And just for those of us who may not know, and so that we can leave with some kind of education in this area.
Yes, absolutely. So I like to equate the menstrual cycle to, I call it the inner seasons, right? So we're all familiar with the weather seasons. We know spring, summer, fall, winter, and we know it's a cycle, right? So we know what to expect in fall. We know it's going to be cold in winter, so we are familiar with the natural rhythm, right? So it's no surprises when summer comes, right? We know it's coming. And
Mhm.
so I equate that to the inner season. So I'm going to take you on a quick little journey through the seasons, okay? The inner season. So I'm going to start with the menstruation phase of the cycle, because that's the phase that people are most familiar with, right? And so when a person is menstruating, that phase of the cycle is equated with winter. Okay. Okay. So, what do we like to do in winter? It's cold outside. We like to curl up, right? The days are not as long. The nights are real long. We need some comfort foods, during winter. For a lot of people who menstruate, they need a little more magnesium in their bodies during that time. So, a lot of times we'll equate chocolate with that
Mhm.
particular phase of the cycle, because chocolate has magnesium in it. Dark chocolate is best. So that's what's happening. And when we track the cycle, so it's important that people who menstruate track their cycle so they can develop patterns. So, and we think about, for the most part, the cycle happening in 28 days. And I say for the most part because that's a generalization. So for some people, it happens in 30 days. For some people, it's 26 days. But each person who menstruates needs to know their normal. So I'm going to just use the generalization. So when you're tracking your cycle, day one starts on the first day that you start to have your period. So that's day one. For most people, again, on average, that could be 5 days, 7 days. For some people, it's four, right? So you need to know your normal. So that is the winter phase, okay, or the menstruation phase. So what comes after winter? Spring, right? So spring is like new beginnings. When we think about spring, we're so glad that winter is over because, it was cold. And spring is like blossoming, new beginnings. And so this is what we call the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle. And this is roughly days 5 through 13, somewhere around in there. Again, it's going to be different for everybody. But this is the time for people who menstruate to like have those creative ideas, get stuff done. Like, you back in action now, okay? And so the next phase is what we call ovulation, okay? And this is equated with summer. And so with ovulation, yes, that has to do with making babies. So if you want to
Mhm.
get pregnant, then that's the time to get busy, during ovulation. But the ovulation phase is also about manifesting. Okay, manifesting those things that you want, your desires, whatever that is. So it's not just about creating a child, it's maybe birthing a new business, or a new idea at school, or whatever that is. That's that time to really, really manifest. And so that's going to be roughly days 14 to 20. All right. And then the last phase we equate with fall, right? And that's called the luteal phase. Now, this is the phase that, if anyone has ever heard of the acronym PMS,
Mhm.
people have probably heard of that,
Yeah.
premenstrual syndrome, right? This is where the stereotypical, like, BITCH concept comes from, right? And I like to really reframe that acronym from premenstrual syndrome to premenstrual self-care. So this is the time to really turn inward. to reflect. This is the time to declutter, right? And I mean physical declutter, cleaning up your closet, your office space, your room, whatever that is. But it's also the time to get rid of toxic people.
Mm-hmm.
It's also the time to get rid of toxic behaviors. Because what often happens during fall is that, a lot of the stuff that hasn't been working for us, it shows up in our face. And, because of what's happening in our bodies, we tend to have less estrogen during this time of the cycle. And without that estrogen, we're not trying to collaborate. We're not trying to, be good listeners. Okay. We're not trying to work on no problems. We just gonna cut to the chase,
Right.
like no, So, by the way, if you don't menstruate and you're wanting to know the best times of the cycle to deal with problems, is during spring and summer. That's when estrogen levels are higher, and people who menstruate are more likely to be listening and have that loving ear and all of that. So that's going to be during the follicular phase and the ovulation phase. Note to yourselves. So those are the 4 phases of what I call the inner seasons. And when everyone knows them, so let's say we have, a husband or boyfriend, if he knows because he's been tracking with his partner the cycle, right?
Right.
If he knows that, she's in the luteal phase, this is leading up to the menstruation phase, then this is the time to rub her feet or draw her bath water or make her favorite dinner or get her favorite takeout. Like, this is the time to show that you have her back, that you on board. So a lot of times what men will do is vacate. They'll be gone.
Right.
Like, I'm out. Deuces for 5 days. Right? And it's not their fault. It's just because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to deal. So now they know how to deal, Brother Ernest.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, because again, maybe just me being raised with so many women, that was my outtake on it. Even in my marriages, definitely paid attention to the times, right? So I definitely probably wouldn't know exactly what date, but I can kind of figure, when it's getting close or whatever, and then as you learn your partner, you can tell by their mood changes and the way those things. And so I was the one, okay, I noticed at this time, this, like you said, rubbing the feet or whatever, because, you learn what they like. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Okay, this is what it is. All right, I know that you're going to ask for these 3 things. Let me already have it.
Yes.
Whatever that is. Or if you want ice cream, okay, we already got it. Whatever. So that was me. But again, like you said, in some cases, a lot of men, because we're unlearned and untaught in this area, we're just like, hey, I'm just gonna disappear for the next week or so. I'm working late this week. Whatever it is, to try to avoid the whole thing. But I think we do ourselves a disservice, and especially our daughters and even our partners, when we don't step up to the plate to be able to understand and learn what's going on, because it's a natural cycle. And then once we get older, like I'm 47 now, so once we get into that age group, now we're talking about possibly going into menopause, and that's a
Right.
whole nother cycle. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And so if we don't learn the first cycle, we're definitely going to be thrown off by the next one. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's important for us as parents, both sides, but definitely speaking from a man's point of view, and as a father, that is definitely something that we need to be able to learn more about and be willing and open up to learn more about, to be able to not only know for the knowledge part of it, but then again, it gives us the opportunity to definitely connect with our mates, to connect with our daughters, and help build that bond, and even to for the talking about the daughters, to by having those conversations with them, then it makes them comfortable with having the conversation with the man of their life, whoever that partner is that comes on later on. She's able to have this conversation and be comfortable with saying, this is what I need from you during this time, because he's probably unlearned too. So like, look, this is what I need from you, and they can have them conversations and be okay with it. So speaking of which, so like I mentioned at the very beginning, the way that we met was because you had send me a link about your programs that's more focused towards the dads. So talk to us a little bit about the programs that you have and the differences within them, and just so we can learn more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have three, and so I'll save the dad one for last. So the first one is called Power to the Period. And so that one is for those tween and teen girls and their
Mhm.
moms. I do that in groups. I do it one-on-one, in person, and virtually. Just depends, right, on what people need. And it's beautiful. The feedback that I get from that, first of all, creating the safe space to have the conversations. The young people love it. They love it. We're not judging them for the questions that they're asking. And the mother daughter connection is so, I mean, like, I can't even express the words about how powerful that is. So that's the power to the period. Then, as I mentioned earlier, there's so many grown women who could benefit from knowing the phases of their cycle and how to use it as a guide for self-care, because a lot of their old stuff from when they were,
Mhm.
teenagers comes up, right? So that's the rock with your menstrual rhythm. Again, that can be group, one-on-one, virtual, in person. Again, another just sort of powerful thing to help grown women really embody and embrace the magic of their cycle. That's really, what that is all about. And then finally, for the superstar dads, I have the Dad's Puberty Playbook. And so what that is all about is for those compassionate dads, those dedicated and devoted dads who want to learn how to support their daughters during this process, who want to, lean in, who, acknowledge that they're not ready, who, want to acknowledge that they behind the eight ball, and trying to get prepared for this, but really, really want to, then that's that Dad's Puberty Playbook. And so in there, it's all about, the strategies, the most effective game plan to reduce the fear and increase the confidence to be able to support their daughters with puberty. So those are the various programs.
All right, man. So, Doc, I'm so glad to have you on, Dr. Carmen, because I think that even as we were talking about that you just mentioned a second ago about the safe spaces, and when we talked about this on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, and even why I would definitely want to have this conversation again, because as a father, having this conversation, it begins to even create that safe space for dads and for men to have this conversation, not only with the women in their lives, but even with each other. Because we probably talk. I it probably will come across our conversations first, what I'm saying, before it got to, having a conversation with definitely without with their daughters. They definitely that's gonna take some some work. But I want to be able to at least start building a safe space for us to have these conversations, to open up the space for dads, for brothers, for uncles, to have these conversations like, okay, we have daughters now, we have nieces now, we have young ladies, granddaughters in my case, but young ladies who may just be under our influence at any time, that may be unfortunately in my space, fatherless daughters, right, who we are in contact with and who we are, helping to guide on their way, who don't have a man to have this conversation with, and may not be able to have the conversations with their mothers if they don't feel safe enough to do it. And so just as men, as the leaders, as the leaders of the home, and then just as men, period, no pun intended, we have to be able to have these conversations and be open to having it. So that's definitely was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. So Dr. Carmen, I want you to have the last word. I want you to have the last word. I definitely want you to leave us with a word of advice, inspiration, however you feel. Um, um, to leave us, definitely the fathers, the parents as a whole, but definitely the fathers. Leave us with something that we can take away with this to think about, and also your social media handles and where we can find you at. I'll give you a second to think about that. To my listeners, first of all, thank you guys for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Make sure that you guys are checking us out on our website. That's the dealhealfulfill.org. Dealhealfulfill.org, which is our official website for everything that has to do with the podcast, basically with myself and everything that I'm involved with, whether it be workshops, the podcast, speaking engagements, because yes, of course, I am a speaker, and so you guys can book me to come and talk to your students, definitely at your schools or even your churches or organizations at dealhealfulfill.org/booking. You can find that information, but just more information about everything that we have going on as a whole in general as a company, including the podcast, including workshops, including the ebooks and things like that. And also our t-shirt line, Deal to Heal Tees, and our ebooks. Make sure you also are going to ebooksbyejames.com. So you go to ebooksbyejames.com to check out the ebooks that we have there, because of course we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is that you guys purchase the things that we have made available for you guys in order to support us financially. So definitely want to make sure that you guys are checking us out on those spaces. Also, I've been blessed to be a part of a organization called the Forgiveness Mission, and one of the things that we do, we hold free virtual forgiveness workshops every quarter of the year. You can go to Eventbrite in order to register for that, or you can go to forgivenessmission.com. Again, we talk about forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, who it's for, forgiveness of ourselves, forgiveness of others, everything surrounding forgiveness, which I think is very important for us to know and understand. And so I'm very happy to be a part of this movement. Again, that's the forgivenessmission.com. And we have free virtual workshops every quarter of the year. So whenever you're listening to this, either one just passed or one is coming up. So you can go to forgivenessmission.com and register, or you can go to Eventbrite and register under also forgivenessmission.com. Last but not least, I told you guys how you could win. I told you guys I would tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. And you can win $100 from the podcast by entering our super subscriber contest. So what must you do? First, you must subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook page, and to our podcast on Spotify. And after you've done those three things, you want to text the word WIN, WIN, to our text line at 866 326 0730 in order to qualify to win $100. The contest is ongoing and is random, which means that anytime I can pull a name and that you can be the winner. And once you're in, you're always in. You don't never have to re-up. Once you're in, you always in. You always have the chance to win. So make sure that you guys, again, join our super subscriber contest by first subscribing to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook page, and to our podcast on Spotify. After you've done those three things, text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866 326 0730 in order to qualify to win the $100. Dr. Carmen, again, let me say thank you so very much for being on. I really appreciate you being on the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and also on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you guys go check that one out. That one was a really good, nice and entertaining on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. So I want to thank you again for being on both podcasts to definitely pour into my listeners and bring value to my platform. So I definitely appreciate it. And I want you to have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So I just really want to encourage all parents to take bold action with this. Take bold action. So if you are a mom, acknowledge whatever sort of negative stigma you might be carrying about, the menstrual cycle. It's not your fault. It was a sign of the times. That's how you were taught. But be open to the possibility that it doesn't have to be a curse. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. If you have a daughter, reach out to her. If you have a son, it's important to teach our sons about this as well. If you need some support, I'm here. And then for the dads, absolutely lean in to this, because, as a dad, it's really easy to be focused on wanting to protect our little princesses, protect, daddy's little girl. But what happens is that we don't often prepare her for life when we're focused on protecting her. So lean into this aspect of her development and continue to be the model for, the type of men that you would want in her world when she grows up. So, the best way to receive that type of support, I am on Instagram at Period of Empowerment. I have a website, but the best way is really in our Facebook group. And that is our Empower Her Facebook group for parents who want to dignify their daughter's life periods. And that's where you can come with your fears, right? Share them there. Come with what you're struggling with and get support and feedback from like-minded folks. So I really hope to see y'all in the Facebook group. That's Empower Her for parents who want to dignify their daughter's life periods.
All right. And we can't end it no better than that. Again, thank you, Dr. Carmen, for being on. To my listeners, thank you guys for tuning in one more time to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.